Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Elite 11 Finals official roster has been released. You got the names who are going to be competing June 14th to June 16th out in Los Angeles in that Elite 11 showcase. And you talk about some of the more fun showcases and camps across the country on the recruiting trail. I think the Elite 11 is the best. You take a look at the alumni of the Elite 11, some of the quarterbacks that have competed throughout the last decade. All of those guys, like most of the NFL quarterbacks you see, were Elite 11 finals competing with some of the other better high schoolers in their particular classes. And so the Elite 11 is a phenomenal showcase. And it also kind of brings all these quarterbacks together from variety of different, not only locations geographically, but levels of high school football. And you get them all on the same football field and really see kind of side by side who's really has the best arm in this class. For example, you have Elijah Brown playing at Mater Dei, one of the best teams across the country. And then you have a guy like Daniel Kaling coming out from the state of Nebraska playing at Bellevue. You're going to be able to see these guys on the same field, and it kind of allows you to stack these quarterbacks a little bit more effectively than watching Daniel Kaling's tape from Nebraska high school football and then watching Elijah Brown's tape from Mater Dei. It's going to look a little bit different, but you get these guys on the same field. You get to stack these arms. That's what I think is most intriguing about the Elite 11 finals. Now, before we get into it, I'm going to talk a little bit about who got snubbed, who I think is going to really show out. But again, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a really busy month on the recruiting trail, talking about these high school kids, talking about kids in the transfer portal, and the support you guys have shown truly does mean a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for all the support. Over 5,000 subscribers on the channel is truly mind-blowing, and it's going to be a busy next couple months. Like a lot of official visits, a lot of commitments scheduled in the next couple months. So if you do enjoy it, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, we appreciate all the support you guys have shown. Without further ado, let's get into it, and I want to talk about who got snubbed. First guy I have on my list, Michael Van Buren, and I am convinced Michael Van Buren is getting disrespected because of the height. Like, not 6 foot, doesn't really check that box for the analytic nerds, but he's a guy, 2-year starter at St. Francis Academy in Maryland, one of the best high school football programs across the country. Very productive. You watch the film. He's a very polished guy that can make all the throws. He's extremely accurate. I don't get how you leave a guy out, especially a guy who's an Oregon commit, one of the programs that I think is trending up the most across the country. I really want to see Michael Van Buren and how he stacks up against some of these top arms. And a lot of the same things I'm talking about Michael Van Buren also apply to a guy like Walker White and Jake Merklinger. Walker White, the Auburn commit, Hugh Freeze's future quarterback one, an Auburn program that I think a lot of fans and national media members across the country are excited about. Hugh Freeze has been phenomenal developing quarterbacks wherever he's been. Walker White, arguably the most talented quarterback you'll ever get to work with, and you're going to leave him out of Elite 11. And he's also a guy that you take a look at his high school film, he's a dude that would really show out because the size is there, the arm strength is there, the arm talent is there. He's a guy that would have really been impressive, I think, to watch compete at the Elite 11. Last guy, Jake Merklinger, another guy that how are you going to leave a top 100 dude nationally, according to 24/7 Sports, I should add, who's committed to arguably the best and most explosive offense across the country in Josh Heupel in Tennessee. He's another guy that I would want included in this list. And that's no disrespect to the other quarterbacks that they've included. Like, I think Dante Reno is a very intriguing guy. I think Danny O'Neill, the Colorado commit, very intriguing guy to Indianapolis. But it seems tough to leave out the future quarterback one of Tennessee, the future quarterback one of Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers, and then Michael Van Buren as well, who's one of my favorite quarterbacks in this class. So a couple of guys I think got snubbed a little bit, but again, a lot of really good arms. Now I want to talk about who's probably going to show out the most at this showcase. And the first guy I do want to highlight is DJ Lagway, because you talk about like traits, arm talent, arm strength, DJ Lagway. Like that ball just is a rocket out of his hand. You get him in t-shirts and shorts, throwing the football around in some beautiful weather out in Los Angeles. I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people are just going to be turning heads. And that discussion is going to be start talking about how do we stack him up in this quarterback ranking. Again, he is a 5-star. A lot of guys like him, but he's a guy that I really could see even helping his stock even more just because of just how talented that arm is. Now, a couple like names that off the beaten path, maybe some diamonds in the rough, if you will. And I'm going to go out to Nebraska again and talk about Daniel Kaling, a guy that Missouri commit. He decommits once Dylan Raiola doesn't commit to Nebraska because Nebraska wasn't really going after him. I think they put all their eggs in one basket with Dylan Raiola. When Dylan Raiola does not commit to Nebraska, Nebraska pivots, gets the in-state kid and Daniel Kaelin. But you check out his film. We've talked about this with Nebraska fans. Super talented dude that I don't think he's flashy like a guy like DJ Lagway or Dylan Raiola. He's not going to throw the football out of the stadium in terms of arm power, but layering the football, accurate and on time with the football. He checks all those boxes. I think he's one of the sneakier, more polished quarterbacks. And I was going to say talented. I don't know if I go with talented, but polished quarterbacks in this class. And I think he's going to be a perfect fit into what Nebraska wants to do with that 2 tight end Satterfield set. But Daniel Kaelin's a guy that if you're looking for accuracy, you're looking for the ball to come out on time. I think Daniel Kaelin checks a lot of those boxes. Storyline I want to talk about. Jadyn Davis, Noland going at it. The two guys that are kind of battling it out for how they're going to stack in the quarterback rankings, they're going to be battling for a long time. This is just their first battle because you're at Michigan, Ohio State commits. I think both, you look at the runway for both of these players as they get to school, like they're going to be starting for 2 to 3 years, I think, at their schools. And you're going to see who is the better guy, because Ohio State went after Jadyn Davis too. And he obviously ends up going to Michigan. I think they got a really nice cat in there, Noland. I think they're two of the better quarterbacks in this class, but I'm excited for that rivalry to start between Jadyn Davis and Noland, who are going to be going head to head. Another quarterback I want to talk about is Elijah Brown. Very similar things that I said about Michael Van Buren that I'm going to say about Elijah Brown. He's a little taller. He checks that 6 foot by. I think he's 6'1.5". Played at Mater Dei. He's been a 2-year start. He started since his sophomore year at Mater Dei. Extremely impressive stats. Extremely impressive film. And again, when you talk about evaluating quarterbacks, you want winners at the highest level of high school football. That is exactly what Elijah Brown's been doing at Mater Dei. You take a look at the alumni from Mater Dei, obviously a guy like Bryce Young, Matt Leinart. He's going to be an interesting guy. He's one of the few top quarterbacks that are uncommitted. You take a look at where he's trending on the recruiting trail, Stanford, which is kind of a head scratcher because talk about programs that the runway for them as a Pac-12 or Power 5 team ain't looking great. I think Stanford would be in that category. I wonder, you're going to have USC guys there. He seems like a guy that if USC wanted to turn the heat up, I think USC, in a very similar way that they did with that Nebraska did with Dylan Raiola, kind of put all their eggs in one basket, really went after Dylan Raiola hard, had some traction at some point with Dylan Raiola. He obviously goes to Georgia. USC, if they want to take a quarterback in this 2024 class looking for a pivot, you got one guy right in your backyard in Elijah Brown, who I think, again, he's been a winner at the highest level. You telling me if USC doesn't turn up the heat on Elijah Brown, you can't beat out Stanford for his commitment? Now, the only thing that I think would maybe why USC wouldn't go after him or Elijah Brown wouldn't be interested is you have Malachi Nelson committed in the 2023 class, and maybe Lincoln Riley's thinking, all right, Malachi Nelson's going to be our guy, and then we're going to go get a kid in the 2025 class. And you talk about Lincoln Riley adding Cliff Kingsbury to that staff. I in my mind, it's one of the most appealing spots, destinations, if you will, for quarterbacks. You can look at what Lincoln Riley's done with quarterbacks. He's done a pretty damn good job. He's obviously doing a phenomenal job with Caleb Williams. So maybe they're saying, hey, Elijah Brown might not be our guy. Let's turn our attention to this 2025 class and really go hard at the 2025 class and find their quarterback and get him locked in. So maybe not, but again, you take a look at the 2024 class, most of these top arms are already committed. And so I wouldn't be surprised if USC wants a quarterback, which they don't have in this 2024 class, to really turn it up on a guy like Elijah Brown. Run through some of the other names. Dylan Raiola, not much to talk about. Silly arm talent. If you're asking me who's going to stand out the most, it's probably going to be Dylan Raiola. Will Hammond, I haven't watched as much Will Hammond, but Texas Tech and Jerry Maguire, he's doing a phenomenal job recruiting that state of Texas. He's an interesting name. I guess one other guy I'd want to kind of shout out is Ryan Puglisi, the Georgia commit, but he says he's locked in at Georgia, and I think that's a smart thing for him to say. And you've seen Georgia has right now 3 guys that could be starting quarterbacks on their roster right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if some teams like Texas A&M that don't really have Texas A&M has a quarterback, but not a great quarterback in their 2024 class. If you're a program that doesn't have a quarterback locked up, I wouldn't be surprised if those programs are turning their attention to Ryan Puglisi and say, hey, Georgia, you're not Georgia's guy. Come be our guy at whatever our school is. And then Trevor Jackson, the last uncommitted guy from Florida, talented dude. He's a really good athlete. I think he uses his athleticism a little bit more than his arm talent. So I don't know if he's going to be a guy that's going to necessarily turn heads in terms of pure arm talent. But in terms of athletic traits, there's a lot to like about a guy in Trevor Jackson. So really excited to see how this progresses. You look at last year, Jackson Arnold. I mean, started this late process outside the top 50 nationally, worked his way up to, I believe, a top 5 finish nationally, the second best quarterback in the class. And he was the MVP of the Elite 11 Showcase. And so you talk about recruiting rankings and how these guys stack them up 24/7, on 3, rivals. They put a lot of stock in these showcases, getting to see all the top quarterbacks on one field. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. We'll be talking about it a little bit more. So again, appreciate you guys checking us out. If there's a name I left out and you wanted me to shout out, let me know in the comment section. We'll chop it up about them. So again, appreciate the support you guys have shown. Again, if you do enjoy the content, lock in, subscribe to the channel. A lot of recruiting coming later this month. So we appreciate you guys checking this out. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.